is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Jo Swinson takes your calls with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
Now, as if you need reminding, this time last week we had Conservative Boris Johnson taking your calls. I should make it plain, we have invited all the other main party leaders, including Labour's Jeremy Corbyn, on into LBC to take calls with me for an hour, and when they do, you will hear it. Of course, Nigel Farage is on LBC with my colleague Ian Dale. But now we move to Lib Dem leader Jo Swinson. The calls are piling up. I'm just going to start with one. Jo Swinson, thank you for coming by. I appreciate these are very busy times. Don't in any way take this personally, but do the party have a problem with you, Jo? You're smiling. With you, Jo Swinson. At the start of October, your
Why
party
would
was...
I take it personally?
Yeah. Your party was in a healthy second position with 23%. They've seen a lot more of you in those weeks now, and you find yourself down in 13% in a rather remote third place. Are you part of the problem?
Well, I mean, if I'm going to take that personally, presumably Nigel Farage will do the same, because the Brexit party, I think, has seen an even steeper drop. Like, I mean, in this election, we have seen that deal between Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, and we've seen a sort of a traditional squeeze that happens in many elections. But if you look at what's happening in different seats around the country, Liberal Democrats are targeting lots of constituencies. Our campaigns are going well, and we're on course to make gains. So I'm excited about what happens next Thursday.
But when you started, you said that you were a viable opportunity to be a Prime Minister. I think even in your wildest dreams, you probably wouldn't go that far now, would you?
Well, I would love that job. And I do still think, and absolutely still believe, I could do a better job than either Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn. But equally, I recognise that that arrangement between the Brexit Party and the Conservatives has changed that electoral arithmetic. What would have been feasible as an opportunity in a four-party fight in a first-past-the-post system with all of the volatility that would bring in. I mean, I think it was right to set out that ambition. Now, of course, looking at how things are, we need to make sure we win seats from the Conservatives.
So you're not part of the problem
Boris
before we
Johnson.
go to the first call.
No,
You're
I
not the
don't
problem. No. All right, you shake your head. Let's get to the first caller. Eleanor is in Barnet. Eleanor, you're through to Jo Swinson. Go ahead. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Jo.
Good morning, Eleanor.
If the polls are correct, and we've just heard 13%, and you're returned with about 14 seats, how clever was it to make a stand in overturning the largest democratic vote ever held in this country?
Jo Swinson.
So I believe that we will do better than that suggestion, not least because some of those polls don't take into account tactical voting, which is happening in many constituencies, and across London and across the rest of the country, there's lots of seats where Lib Dems are in.
This isn't even a people's
contention.
vote, is it?
Well, we do still support a people's vote. We've led the campaign for a people's vote, and we also were very straightforward and said, look, if we did, achieve that electoral earthquake and elect a Liberal Democrat majority government, then we would stop Brexit. And I don't think people should be surprised that that's our position. And in terms of...
Well, I think Eleanor, you're surprised, aren't you?
I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed at what you're saying. You're not answering my question anyway.
Go ahead.
I mean, what you asked was whether it was clever, and what I'm saying to you, Eleanor,
how clever was it?
I'm saying that it's honest. I'm saying what we actually want to do as a party and as leader of a party. I believe that remaining in the EU is the best future for our country. For
and not even giving
jobs.
Another vote.
But this is a vote, right?
Well, it's not a referendum.
No, it's not. And I would rather that we'd had a people's vote, and I will be very happy to continue to campaign to have one. But in this election, to give people that choice, I mean, let's remember, you might, I imagine, Eleanor, perhaps take the view, opposite to this, but there are millions of people in our country who do want to remain in the European Union. And I think it's right that they have a voice. And I think it's right that people have the opportunity to make that choice at this current democratic event.
Eleanor?
We have had that choice. We have, and we have said, the majority says leave.
So
you're saying we should have another choice?
I'm saying democracy didn't end on the 23rd of June 2016, and that if people in this country decide at this election that they want to remain, then people should be allowed to make that choice. And I've spoken to lots of people who have changed their minds since the vote in 2016, partly as a result of what they've seen since then. So I just don't think in that sort of fixed point in time that it's set in stone forever. And I also think that what is on offer now is quite significantly different to what was set out then.
OK, Eleanor, thank you. Before we come to the next call, I mean, it is reported that not even your predecessor, Sir Vince Cable, would have gone as far as you would have gone in just automatically, effectively remaining. You still don't see this as a misstep. You still don't think there was 48% of the country who voted 3.5 years ago voted to remain. You clearly haven't engaged them. Many of them believe that there should be another referendum. That has been your misstep.
No, I mean, we're still campaigning for another referendum. Look, you can't fault the Liberal Democrats on our campaigning for another referendum. We've led that campaign 17 times in Parliament. We put down amendments to have a people's vote. And, you know, that those, particularly the Labour Party, refused to back it as recently as just a few weeks ago. So we could have been having a people's vote on Boris Johnson's Brexit deal right now instead. And I think that would have been a clearer way to resolve this. It has the attraction of having a result which is clear, right? Because at the moment, we're assuming that every single person that voted to leave in 2016 is very happy with a very hard Brexit, with the possibility of a no-deal Brexit at the end of next year. And I don't think that that's a safe assumption to make.
Thank you for that. Victoria's Inverness. Let's get the next caller. Victoria on the radio. Go ahead. Your question to Jo.
I'm so glad to hear that democracy didn't end in 2016. So can you explain why you're right to be against a Scottish independence referendum is more important than the right of the people of Scotland to have a say about our future?
Well, you know, it's my future to Victoria, and the people that I speak to in Scotland, you know, in my constituency, in all parts of Scotland, there's many people in Scotland who do not want the additional chaos of another independence referendum.
Hang on, so we can have a second referendum as regards European membership. We can't have one regarding Scottish independence. Explain your position there.
Does anyone seriously think that the Brexit situation at the moment is going well, that we are not in an impasse and in total gridlock and chaos? I think, you know, whether you
haven't answered my question.
Wait, no, hang on, I'm getting there. Whether you remain or leave, I think we can all look at Brexit and say there's a mess and we need to solve it. And I'm proposing that a people's vote is a good way to solve that particular mess.
But not for Scotland.
Well, Scotland's not in a mess when it comes to independence. Scotland is in a mess in terms of Brexit as part of the United Kingdom. And the last thing that we need is to pour some more chaos on top of that. You know, in Scotland, we have had 8 years. I mean, for people who are listening, if you have been frustrated by 3.5 years of constitutional debate about Brexit, you know, spare a thought for those of us in Scotland who have been having this for, you know, more than 8 years now, where we've had all of that constitutional chaos around independence and then now around Brexit too. Most people just want to make it stop and have governments get on.
Now you say there is constitutional chaos around independence. You just said there wasn't.
There was for 3 years from 2011, right?
But you say we're still enduring it now, is what you said.
Brexit is the chaos in Scotland now.
You said constitutional chaos as well.
Brexit is constitutional chaos.
Oh, right. Not Scottish independence is not... No.
Well, it would be, but at the moment it's Brexit, which is a massive chaos for everyone.
Thank you. The fact of the matter is... Thank you. The fact of the matter is that her stance is that it's the referendums that are divisive. All the referendums do is shine a light on the divisions that already exist. It's all well and good to say you want to move on and stop talking about independence, but the rest of us don't think that if Brexit went away, everything would be fine. When all of the English MPs can outvote the combined other members of the union of supposed equals, then that is a democratic deficit that is a problem. And making Brexit go away will not fix it. The people of Scotland are not daft, and we can see that, and we can do math.
Well, look, I think Victoria, we just have a different view on this, and you would like, even if we stop Brexit, to have another independence referendum, and fair enough, you can argue for that. And you know, my view is actually, I want Scotland to be in the UK for exactly the same reasons as I want the UK to be in the EU. We do much better when we work with our closest neighbours, where we trade with each other, we have those strong relationships, we're able to solve problems together, like the climate emergency. I think we're better working together, and that's why I'm fighting to keep our UK together and to keep the UK in the European Union.
Victoria, thank you. Paul in Finchley. Paul, you're on the radio through to Jo Swinson. Go ahead, Paul.
Hello, hi, Jo.
Hi, Paul.
So there are millions of voters, I think, up and down the country who don't want to vote for either Johnson or Corbyn, which really should have put you in a very strong position. But the problem is, for most of us, me included, is that the reality is you're probably not going to win. And therefore we have to therefore we have to hold our noses effectively and vote for the person, in my case, Boris Johnson, who I really don't like. But I have to stop Corbyn gets government, because that, in my view, will destroy our country economically. Had you said that you were prepared to go into coalition, in my case with a Conservative government, but for others perhaps with a Labour government, I would have voted for you. If you had said, I'd sit down with Johnson, I'd put second referendum on the table, because he may then be in a position where he has to accept it or he loses, and you say, I'll sit down with him and make a coalition, I'll vote for you. But until you do that, I can't vote for you, because otherwise I might let Corbyn in. And that is a position that nobody should want.
Jo Swinson.
I totally understand your concerns, Paul, about Jeremy Corbyn, and we've seen in the news today further revelations that show this man is not fit to be Prime Minister. And
I assume you refer to the allegations of anti-Semitism, just
indeed,
to be plain.
Indeed,
yeah,
yes,
ahead.
indeed. The first thing I would say to you, Paul, is, you're living in Finchley. You have the chance to vote for an absolutely wonderful Liberal Democrat candidate.
We mustn't get into too many constituency areas, as you know. Thank you.
Okay. You probably know who I'm talking about.
I did warn off the Prime Minister as well, so you're in good company. Go ahead.
But suffice to say, that's,
But speak to the general point. There were people in other constituencies where a vote could be key for Jo Swinson's person, but they can't do it because you don't seem to do deals.
Yeah. Well, look, there's lots of places that we can win now as Liberal Democrats, where previously they might have been Conservative strongholds, even places that might have been constituencies of former Conservative Prime Ministers, where the Liberal Democrats can now win and will not put Corbyn in number 10. And so, I mean, that is my message. Now, I will, work constructively with people cross-party.
Now what does that mean?
No, well, let's look
at a coalition.
No, I don't think that we're in coalition territory. I think
you don't think. So
we're not. We're not.
So you categorically say, Nick, look at me in the eyes at 31 minutes after 9 on December whatever. You're never going to form a coalition.
Not never again. I mean, I'm only 39, right?
As a result,
I generally agree in pluralist politics,
let's see how you do
right?
next week, then the knives will be out. But anyway, come on. As a result of this general election,
coalition is, with these leaders of these parties, I cannot possibly envisage it, because they've both gone off to the extremes, right? You've got Boris Johnson off with Nigel Farage, you've got Jeremy Corbyn off to the hard left, and so it makes that impossible.
Okay.
But what we have done is worked across party. We've done it in the last 2 years on the People's Vote campaign. And if I think about that, we've stopped a no-deal Brexit earlier this year. And that was working with Lib Dem MPs, Labour MPs, Conservative MPs, Plaid Cymru, SNP, Green, Independent MPs, a real mix. And we achieved, significant success in stopping us crashing out without a deal, working in a cooperative way across party. And I will always be keen to do that. It's generally the kind of way that I work. I'm not particularly tribal. I just find myself up against two parties who are led by people who have taken them to the extremes in Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. And I think both of them are damaging and dangerous for our country, and we can have a better politics. The more Liberal Democrat MPs we have in that new parliament, the better chance that we have not only of stopping Brexit, but also of a sort of more respectful politics, which is, as I say, not heading off to the extremes.
Let's go to some of the texts, tweets and emails. Rachel in Bexley. How has the Lib Dem policy as regards parole and the revolving doors of justice been influenced by the events of London Bridge exactly a week ago? They refer, of course, to the fatal attack by the jihadi on London Bridge last Friday.
A tragic attack. And
what went wrong?
Clearly, one of the things that went wrong, and there should be an investigation to identify all of the different elements, but one of the things that went wrong is that somebody who should not have been on the streets able to carry out that attack was, and that he had been released seemingly without any kind of assessment of what risk he posed. And that cannot be right for people who have been convicted of terrorism offences. Well, I mean, the law has already changed. So people who are sentenced for similar offences now, and indeed in the last several years, it would be assessed by a parole board. So that they can make an individual judgment. I mean, clearly...
But do you think if a jihadi or a terrorist to the right or the left gets 16 years, he or she should serve 16 years, as Boris Johnson is suggesting?
Well, do you know what I think is the most important thing is, well, first of all, that at any point that they're released, whether that's during that time or at 16 years, that they don't pose a threat to the public.
So they're monitored.
So that they have to be risk assessed. But it's also about what do we do during that time? How do we make sure that we are doing everything we can to reduce that risk? And when you have prisons that are overcrowded and where you're not able to have the kind of time for prison officers to do those risk assessments, but also to rehabilitate people, then actually we're not doing ourselves any favours, right? You just make the country less safe. So I think we should be driven by what works. And what we know is that what often is popular in a soundbite in terms of criminal justice is not effective in keeping people safe.
Pav is in Bath. Pav, you're through to Jo Swinson. Go ahead, Pav. Morning.
Hi there. Joe,
Hi.
You recently came out and saying that voting for tuition fees was a mistake. If it was, how would you rectify that mistake without putting the country in more debt? Or did you just lie in order to gain popularity with student voters?
No, we didn't. But I've been very clear. What we did on tuition fees was wrong because we had said that we weren't going to do that, and then we did it. So it's a kind of open and shut case of clearly, therefore, we did the wrong thing. If you look at the actual policy that we implemented, I think there's a lot that you can say that was good about, for example, the additional support and bursaries for people from low-income backgrounds, which did result in more people from poor backgrounds going to university. But we'd said we weren't going to do it, so we shouldn't have done it. And in this manifesto, for partly the reasons that you sort of outline, we are saying that we should review how higher education finance works. We should restore maintenance grants, which the Conservatives cut, so that we can help people go to university. But we're not making a big unfunded spending commitment to turn the clock back on tuition fees. And if I'm really honest about where I think we can make the most difference in improving people's life outcomes and life chances, it's actually about investing in early years. And so we are setting out significant investment for schools who are struggling, for additional support for young people, children from the poorest backgrounds before they even start school, so through Sure Start and through the early years settings, nurseries that they are in. We've got a big offer on more free childcare, but also improving the quality of that childcare by increasing the amount paid per hour. So investing in the future, it's the best way to do that is actually investing at a really early age, and that's where our focus is on in this current plan for the future that we have at this election.
Pav, thank you. Karen in Stratford. Karen, you're through to Jo Swinson. Go ahead, Karen. Good morning.
Hiya, good morning.
Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. I just wanted to put a question to you, and I wanted you to explain what is it with you and your party putting forward this sort of gender-neutral, children can go to school, boys can go to school wearing skirts, and why do you think that that's acceptable? I mean, we live in a free society right now, but what is going on with this? Do you think that it's right that you're allowing this to go through?
What's the philosophy behind it, Jo Swinson?
Well, it's really about giving kids choice, and what it came out of is we had a young member of the Lib Dems who came along to our conference. She, I think, was 14 at the time, and she made the very good point that she was frustrated at school being told that she had to wear a skirt when she wanted to run about and play football and do handstands and all of those things that I think we'd all want kids to be able to have the freedom to do and not feel that they're constrained. And why should we be be saying to girls at school, or indeed to boys, you have to wear this particular
So you'd
this
allow your
particular
sons
outfit.
to wear a dress, should they so desire?
If they wanted to, yeah. And I mean, my 5-year-old's got silver sparkly shoes. I think I might have technically bought them in the girls section, but he really wanted the silver sparkly shoes. So, he's got silver trainers. The sky is still there.
Karen, it's about
That
being...
is absolutely completely different. You can't. So you're going to say, right? So a child of say 5, a little boy, will say to his mum that I want to go to school wearing a skirt, and you don't think that this is going to increase bullying in schools because you're saying it was one girl. This is not a majority. This is a minority. Like, there is not a high percentage of children, like boys, going to school wanting to wear skirts. And then the gender-neutral passports. Wait a minute, I identify as an alien. When is this going to stop? What are you doing to our kids?
Do you support gender-neutral passports?
Yes,
I don't.
No, sorry, I'm so sorry. Karen, I think I know where you are, Karen. Jo Swinson.
Yeah, I do.
Why?
But just on just to respond to Karen's point there about what should 5-year-olds be allowed to do. I mean, we're not sort of forcing anybody. We're just saying that schools ought to have a policy that doesn't require boys and girls to be sort of separate, that they can choose. And do you know what? There's lots of girls who do want to wear trousers. In fact, in many schools, girls can wear trousers.
You don't think a little boy wearing a dress age 5 might be open to bullying?
Well, I think it's important that schools have policies in place to prevent and to deal with bullying.
Right.
And seriously, I mean, I've seen some young boys that that have worn skirts and so on. I mean, like, seriously, are we saying that, like, if they want to do that, we should be policing them in some way?
Let's come back to passports. Do you not see the issue of national security if we don't have someone's gender on a passport? If you're seeking...
No, I'm afraid I genuinely don't.
Right, so let's say that we're trying to stop someone getting into or out of the country, and they are 5'9" with blonde hair and blue eyes. Can't we have their gender too?
Well, I think it gives people the opportunity to state their gender. So it's not say you don't have gender listed. It just gives the option of saying male, female, or...
What do we say at Dover Docks or Gatwick or Heathrow? We're looking for a person. We can't say a man or a woman who might be seeking to enter the country 5'9" with blonde hair and blue eyes.
I mean, like, seriously, this is about how people identify.
This is about security.
No, it's really not. I'm sorry. It's really not.
You don't see at Dover Docks or Gatwick Airport. It would be quite nice to know someone's gender. Quite appropriate to know someone's gender.
I mean, seriously. I mean, how do you know somebody's gender? I mean, you're
if I'm trying to
suggesting
stop someone, I'm going to say it's a male, 5'9" with blue hair and with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, and how are you going to check that, right? I mean, if
because then the staff know what they're looking for.
But I mean, on that basis, right? What happens? You're saying people could dress up to look like something different. I mean, I think if people are trying to enter the country illegally, they may well be deploying different ways of doing that. I don't think
under the Lib Dems,
the letter on their passport on the gender thing is really going to be...
we have passports with X on it, and one of our citizens goes to Saudi Arabia or the Republic or China, where they're immediately imprisoned because they're X and they don't allow X into the country. What do we do then?
This is not about forcing people into any
but somebody wants to be
specific
X.
choice. Well, if they want to be, then they can choose that.
But what happens when they go to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia doesn't recognise X? What do we do with them then?
Well, like, they can make that decision for themselves, Nick.
But they find themselves in Riyadh and they're British citizens and they've just been detained because they don't know whether they're man or woman.
So if somebody is in difficulty in a foreign country and they're a British citizen, then we should be giving them the kind of consular assistance. I think the idea, there is already...
When they leave Gatwick, if they need a body check, who does it if it's an X?
Well,
if we fear they're carrying drugs on their person, who searches X?
Well, I think it would make sense for them to their wishes to be respected, right? I mean,
Hang on, so I'm a man and I could say I'd like to be searched by a woman or vice versa? As an X?
No, hang on. There are people in this country...
This doesn't make sense, does it?
There are people in this country who do not define as male or female, right?
I get that.
And if somebody has a preference, just like,
Someone has a preference? So it's a preference?
No, if someone has a preference for who is searching them...
I'd like a woman to search me this
who
afternoon,
is searching
but I'll
them,
have a man tomorrow.
Who is searching them, then I don't see any legitimate reason why that should be denied, in the exact same way that if I go for a medical appointment, then if I'm going for a smear test or whatever, then I might make a request that I'd rather have that done by a woman. I might it's I just don't. I think there's a sort of hang-up that people have about this. Some people don't identify as male or female. It's not a massive deal. Get over it. It's not stopping anyone else getting on with their lives. And can we just be respectful to one another and treat people as the individuals that they are, recognising that this group of people in our society already feels very vulnerable and marginalised, already feels discriminated against, gets bullied, and can be victims of violence. Let's do these small things that can show that we are taking people seriously as the individuals that they are.
Karen, thank you for the call. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Adil in Manchester, your question, if you would. Adil, good morning.
Hi, Joe. I just wanted to say how you feel confident in leading the Liberal Party by undermining the public whilst you were in coalition with the Conservatives. Just talking about you personally, I can give you two examples. The first one is climate. For example, you voted with the Conservatives to sell off state-owned forests. And as you're aware, the climate emergency is quite important to a lot of people. I just wanted a response to that, to say why you voted to sell off state-owned forests.
Well, Liberal Democrats in coalition, we argued internally very, very hard against that, and we ultimately won that fight. And as a result, they were not sold off. And our plan for the future has the ambition, which is bold and is right, to plant 60 million new trees a year, because trees and forests and green spaces are some of the best ways that we can take carbon out of the atmosphere and get to net zero more quickly to protect our planet for the future.
Quick response from you, if you would, Adil, because we're coming close to time.
Yeah, Joe, but I'm talking about you personally. You personally voted to sell off state-owned forests. I want your response to that, not about your party or what you did in coalition. You personally voted for that. How does that show the public that you care about the climate if you're selling off forests in this country?
But as I'm saying, we ultimately won that battle, and they were not sold off. So, it was a good example of how we exerted our influence in coalition. And yes, sometimes these battles take a little bit of time to win and hadn't been won by the first vote on the matter. But ultimately, we did win that battle.
Last email question. Anthony in Kent, briefly, if you could, Jo Swinson, what would you do about the waspy women problem? Do they deserve the cash? Jo Swinson.
I think there is...
Where would you get the cash? I think we probably all agree these poor souls do deserve it. It's where you'd get it.
Yeah, so I look, there's legal proceedings, and there's going to be a parliamentary ombudsman investigation, and we think that we should respect what that comes out with. And obviously there were people who didn't get the notice that they needed to be able to plan for their retirement, and there needs to be some recognition of that. Okay. The Ombudsman will come up with a way forward, and obviously we'll respect that.
Obviously, when the Queen's broadcast goes out in the afternoon.
I do.
But I was drawn to the fact you celebrated your marriage with a humanist ceremony. You don't do God.
My husband does, actually, but I don't.
You don't believe in God?
Well, I just happen not to believe in God.
That's an interesting combination, that one does and one doesn't. It would appear you triumphed in that particular battle, Jo Swinson.
We also later had a religious blessing.
Right.
But on the day that we were making it's one of the most important promises you ever make in your life, I didn't want to be saying words that I didn't actually believe in. It felt important that we could be...
Lastly, you did it, and I thought you were honest because you apologised for possibly an unfortunate couple of votes in the past. Why is Boris Johnson frightened of Andrew Neil?
Clearly. I think he's frightened of a lot of people. He's frightened of Julie Etchingham as well. He's frightened of me. I think he's refused to debate me. So, and Andrew Neil obviously too. I don't think he's been on Women's Hour yet. So, this is a man who's running away from debate, doesn't want to be scrutinised, which, it kind of would be funny, apart from the fact that this is the man that wants to, is and wants to continue to be our Prime Minister, and he should be held to account.
Thank you for your time being here, taking calls from LBC listeners. Jo Swinson, leader of the Liberal Democrat Party. Just to remind you, we had Boris Johnson previously. Nigel Farage was on a different show. The offer still stands open to Labour's Jeremy Corbyn. 9:47 on LBC. Simon Conway.
Speaking on LBC, the Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson has defended her party's proposal to revoke Article 50 and stop Brexit if her